Hello again. Right now in Britain, we effectively have free and unrestricted immigration. The government may try to disguise this fact, of course, although it's obvious to ordinary people. But there it is, free immigration. Some people think this is a good idea, others are strongly opposed to it. But it happens to be how things are at the moment. We also have a welfare state, which simply means that the government looks after our health and the social well-being of people, stepping in to help them if they become too poor or are struggling to cope. Are these two concepts really incompatible with each other, as Milton Friedman claimed over 20 years ago? If a country has open borders and also a health service to which anybody at all can gain access, as well as a social system which accepts that the government and local authorities have a legal duty to house and feed everybody, then it is inevitable that some people who live in countries which do not have those things will be tempted to move to a country which does. Those wishing for free healthcare and subsidised housing and welfare benefits paid in cash will inevitably not be well-to-do professionals. They will be poor and largely uneducated people who lack housing, food and healthcare in their own country. The needs of these immigrants will almost certainly be greater than those of the native population in the country to which they are heading, and so they will require more of the resources of the welfare state to be devoted to them. That is to say that those already living in the target country will already have somewhere to live, the means to feed themselves and so on. The new arrivals will not have any of those things, and they will need to be provided for them. The money to pay for this must be taken from the existing population, most of whom will be working and paying taxes. This means that taxes will have to be increased to pay for all the new arrivals. We are, of course, already seeing this process in action, but it cannot continue indefinitely. There is a limit to how many tax increases the citizens of a country will be prepared to pay to subsidise the new arrivals, and at a critical point, the welfare state will begin to unravel and it will be a case of every man for himself. In Britain, this process is beginning as it is increasingly obvious that the National Health Service simply cannot cope anymore with the demands being made upon it. Local authorities too are at breaking point, with all their available housing stock being fully occupied. New homes are being built, but of course this cannot be done fast enough to keep up with demand. This will lead to a steep rise in council tax, which will in turn lead to other problems. Anybody who is wondering why their tax bill is soaring and national insurance contributions being increased need look no further than this for the explanation. To see how this works in practice in modern Britain, one need only look at further education colleges in larger cities. At one time, young people with severe learning difficulties attended day centres run by the local council. These were very expensive, and it was thought both more humane and also a lot cheaper to cater for them in the educational system instead. Most colleges now have an SEND department, that is to say special educational needs and disabilities. At the college at which I worked part-time until a couple of years ago, that is to say the Epping Forest campus of New City College, there is a flourishing SEND department. Although the college is in an almost entirely white area, that's to say Debden in Essex, it was noticeable that between 2/3 and 3/4 of the students in the SEND department were either foreign, in that their families had arrived in the country over the last few years, or belonged to visible minorities. The most severely disabled, those with both profound learning difficulties and also extensive physical problems, being confined to wheelchairs and so on, invariably belong to those categories. It was clear to me that many of them had actually been brought to Britain from Turkey, Yemen, Pakistan and so on, because the families knew that the young people had complex needs and would not be properly treated in their own countries. Mostly, those students not only needed extra staff to be employed to help them at the college, but also a huge amount of input was necessary from the National Health Service for their physical disabilities. In short, the welfare state had attracted the families who now placed an extra burden upon its resources. This is of course unsustainable in the long run, and we are now seeing the whole thing accelerating with enormous speed. Many of the Ukrainian families coming here will have children in a similar case, and these will all have to be supported and subsidised from our taxes. I do not know what the solution is, because clearly the present government has no intention of cutting immigration, but if they do not do so, then in the long run we shall have to bid Britain's welfare state farewell.